What I want to do with this video clip is to spend some time discussing the trigger pins. There are two of them. One of them I painted silver. That's the top dead center trigger pin, and that is on the left side of that. And if you look at the notch on the flywheel, I took the nut off. There's a keyway in the flywheel. If you put that keyway facing straight up, that puts the piston up at top dead center. So there's just a little keyway there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but when it's straight up, the engine's at top dead center, and it's the physical location of the trigger pin that determines the spark. So this one would be at top dead center. If you rotate the flywheel backwards, you come to the advanced trigger pin, the red one on the right, and that will trigger an advanced spark. So those are the two trigger pins. The top dead center trigger pin, we want to leave that alone, not touch it, and we're going to use that as the starting point for any adjustments we need to make. Hopefully things will be consistent through all the various engines and Tecumseh engines and flywheels. Okay, to set up the air gap for the top dead center flywheel, I have a piece of aluminum, which is a non-magnetic feeler gauge, which makes it a little easier. And I set this height of the air gap here, the height of the trigger pin, at 15 thousandths, and then bolted it down, screwed it down tightly. So that'll lock that in place. So with the 15 thousandths air gap, that will give us an ignition profile where we have no spark from 0 to somewhere between 65 and 100 RPM, and at which time that air gap will allow the top dead center a spark to begin to start working. The advanced spark has a much wider air gap, so it's going to be delayed in RPM, and it'll start later. So that's how we get the automatic switching of the RPM and the engine sequence. Now the flywheel I'm using here is from an older engine. It has no ring gear because it had a Delco motor generator set that was belt driven, but it gives us a lot better visibility to do the video thing. So what I want to do next is to switch to a flywheel with a ring gear and talk about the little modification we have to do to the advanced trigger pin. Okay, I took the flywheel, turned it around. This is the ring gear on the flywheel here, and the air gap with the OEM trigger pin is way too wide for a reliable advanced spark. So I found some tube, and it's the inside diameter of this tube is about 3 thousandths less than the outside diameter of that tube. So what we can do, very simple modification, is just put this sleeve on. Okay, this sleeve is sticking up just a little bit here, but I want to go ahead and run it and see what RPM we get with this sleeve on it like it is, and if necessary we can very easily grind it down a little bit. So, okay, I got the flywheel mounted, and in order to get the adjustment for the air gap for the top dead center pin, I had to file these holes and to make a slot for them in order to slide the trigger coil bracket down far enough to get my 15 thousandths clearance for here. Another thing that's critically important, would be easy to forget, is the trigger coil is mounted on a bracket so it swivels, and that allows you to make an adjustment to align the center of the trigger pin with the center of the pole on the coil. I can't even see it the way I'm set up here, so I have to use a mirror to look at it from the side to in order to check that alignment. But be sure and check to make sure that the center of the pole piece on the trigger coil lines up with the center of the trigger coil. Okay, the trigger pin's back here hiding behind the ring gear, so it was good that we did the rest of the work with the other flywheel, I guess. I put a red dot. Here's a little timing mark for the advanced timing pin. Here is already a silver dot there. In between them is a reflector for the laser tack. So with that, I guess we can turn this on. Okay, I can see a spark. It's at an advanced. It's already on an advanced spark. We can see the red spot here. So we can turn it down, I guess, and get a shot at that RPM. Oops, I could just switch to the advanced just cut out. So let's make that an RPM measurement. Okay, that says we have a RPM of 188. Seems a little bit low. I'm going to turn the RPM down just a little bit. Yep, that was enough to trip it. So I think our advanced point is like around 190 RPM, which is too low. So what we need to do is increase the air gap between the trigger pin and the trigger coil, and we're going to have to do that by filing it off. You'll notice there was a little bit of extra on the sleeve, so what we need to do is to remove that extra on the sleeve. While I'm here, I think I'll see what the RPM is for the starting spark. To do that, we want to bring this down real slow. Okay, we still have a spark. Slowing it down, we still have a spark. Okay, spark went out. So I'm going to turn it up just a little bit. A pretty slow RPM. Okay, spark just started again. That says 81.9, so 82 RPM. So that's good. That's real good. It's below 100, which is good. So, let's turn this off. Okay, so what I'm going to do is use my little Dremel, and I'm just going to take that extra off with it too. I haven't done this before with a ring gear flywheel, so I didn't want to grind this off until I knew that I needed to. Okay, I ground about half of the excess of that sleeve off. I left it long intentionally so I would have a little bit that I could remove to try to fine-tune what the height is supposed to be. This is actually the first time I've run this configuration on the ring gear flywheel. So I removed about half of that, and we now need to go back and check to see what RPM we wind up with. Okay. Oops, boy, that was, ooh, there you go. Already there. I can see from the timing light that the trigger pin is off to just the right side of the trigger coil, and the advanced trigger pin is indeed firing. It's a little bit delayed in firing, and I haven't seen that before. Could be from the hollow part of the curve. So I need to find the RPM for that. It's 351. Okay, so that's like perfect. Is what I was trying to get between 300 and 400. So that's about as close as I think we'll ever get. I'd already measured the air gap for that at 0.054 inches between the advanced trigger pin as we modified it and the trigger coil, and it gives us an advanced trigger pin height of about 0.207 inches. So we have a friend who has running one of these ignitions on his wife's tractor, and he has a miniature lathe where he can make very neat parts. Very good machinist, very precise, and he's going to make up some of these sleeves for us, and I'll have to ask him to make them about 0.207 inches high. So now I have a number for that. Okay, I was going to mention that when I set the tall trigger pin to the 0.015 inches, that's a little bit of a wide gap for the tall trigger pin. So my thinking was that if we want to make an adjustment to both air gaps, we could probably close that down by 5 or 10 thousandths, and that would be a way to make an adjustment just by adjusting the height of the trigger pin to the advanced trigger pin as well as the top dead center. Top dead center doesn't make any difference, but the advanced we may want to bring it in a little closer. We can always adjust it downward. Okay, one of the things that I noticed is the advanced trigger pin with the sleeve on it left a little cavity in the center because the sleeve was a little bit higher than the original trigger pin. So I was wondering what would happen if we filled that cavity with JB Weld, which has iron filings in it and thus some magnetic properties. So yesterday I just put a little dab of JB Weld in the cavity on the advanced trigger pin, and let's run it and see what the RPM has changed to, if any. So right now the advanced spark advance had moved from the beginning of it to the full advance. That's another thing I noticed here, that there's a little strange jump in the amount of spark advance across the trigger with RPM. So we'll bring the RPM down and we'll find a point where, okay, the advance now is in its slightly retarded place, right at the edge of the trigger coil. I'm bringing the RPM down slowly, waiting for the advanced spark to go away. Oh, there it goes. That's pretty close to where that transition is. That RPM is 302. So I'll bring it up a little bit. I have a little burning up. There we go. Just jump. It's 313 right now, and it reverted to the top dead center spark. Okay, I brought the RPM up, so the advanced spark has just started right now, and let's see what the RPM there is, like 337. So we've dropped the RPM about 20. As I was finishing up the installation of the new ignition on the Tecumseh HH100, it's on a suburban tractor, I started thinking about there has to be little neater, cleaner, simpler ways to adjust the advanced trigger pin. So the tractor's out in the yard, all running. The engine runs fine with the 1/4 screw in it and everything. But I think I'm just looking for a better way to do that task. So what I've done here is, if we leave the Y flywheel on the engine, we don't have to remove it from the engine. We can remove the trigger pin, the advanced trigger pin, the short one, and that gives us a hole. Turns out that hole is a little bit oversized for a number 12 screw, but not sufficiently oversized that we couldn't tap it and put a number 12 screw in there. So what I want to do here is just tap the flywheel, and this is going a lot easier than it was on the larger screw size that I used before. I'm using penetrating oil as a lubricant here. And okay, the taps I'm using it is a 1224, and they're available from Lowe's, and it costs like $6. So given the low cost of the tool, if you don't have a set of tools, taps and dies anyway, this makes it a lot easier than having to remove the flywheel. So I tap it in a little bit and then bring it out and clean the threads off. Okay, after many tries, I finally got a configuration where I have a transition to advanced spark at 325 RPM, which is closest I've ever come with maybe 20 different configurations of advanced trigger pins. But this trigger pin is a new machine screw, and it's got a brass washer underneath it that's 0.035 inches thick.